Hey everyone, welcome to Two Car Pros. My name is Ryan and today I'm going to show you exactly how to replace the front brake pads and rotors for a 2008 Chevrolet Impala. This is fairly easy, pretty standard brake job, so let's get into it. So the first thing I'm going to do is take a standard screwdriver or similar implement and just put it in the rotor like this. So that way I can turn the rotor and it will hold itself against the caliper mounting bracket like that. So I can remove this Torx bolt. So now we can remove this T30 Torx, link down below in the description, to the socket, and we should be able to just remove it. Sometimes these are really seized in there, like if you live in the Midwest where it snows. What you want to do is just heat up this surface around here with a blowtorch. That usually makes the metal expand a little bit, makes it come out of there a little bit easier, or just spray the heck out of it with penetrating fluid. And if you break this off, it's not that big of a deal. You can just drill it out. The next thing we're going to do is grab the entire assembly and just kind of turn it to a more workable position. So it makes it a little easier on us. So next I'm going to grab a 17mm wrench and put it right here on this part of the slide bolt, because this is going to want to move when we remove the bolt. So we need to hold it somehow. Next, 13mm socket on the bolt. And I'm just going to break that loose and back it all the way out. And the bottom slide bolt is exactly the same. Just be careful when you remove this last bolt. The caliper can technically fall off. At this point, we're ready to remove our caliper. Now, a lot of the time, this will have quite a bit of tension on it, and it won't like walk off easy like this one probably is going to. What you do is you take your favorite prying, non-prying implement, and you just kind of stick it in there between the rotor and the pad, and you just kind of work some space into there like this, and this just pushes the caliper back into the housings just a little bit so you can get the caliper off. So we can go ahead and just remove it straight out, just like that. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a zip tie through the caliper like this. That way I can just zip tie it to the spring here. You don't have to do this, but it's a good way to make sure that your caliper isn't just going to fall off while you're not paying attention and potentially damage the brake line, which is be a huge bummer. You don't want that. So this is going to keep our caliper up and out of the way and no tension on the actual brake line, so it's just kind of hanging out. And then for safety, I'm going to replace one of these lug nuts. That way the rotor can't just fall off and find one of my toes. Now we're ready to remove our caliper mounting bracket, which is held on with these two 15mm fasteners. Usually these are on pretty tight, so I have a long breaker bar to break them loose. Yeah, those are on pretty good. There we go. One bolt, two bolts. And then our caliper mounting bracket can kind of just come off straight towards you. Don't worry if one of the brake pads fall. It's okay, we're replacing them. And see, this is why I had the lug nut on here, because look, this could have very easily just have fallen off and smashed one of my toes because I wasn't really paying attention to it. So we remove that, take our rotor off, and place it aside. Next thing I'm going to turn your attention to is the hub. Now, if you live somewhere that snows, this is especially prevalent to you, but this car spent its whole life in the desert, and there's still quite a bit of rust buildup here on the hub. What we're going to do is take a wire brush. You can use a manual one, that's fine. I just happen to have this rotary one. And I'm just going to clean that off. But be careful when you're cleaning this off. You don't want to inhale rust. It's not good for you. Potentially toxic, so do this in a well-ventilated area or wear a mask. Don't worry, I won't make you watch the whole thing. We just want to make sure that this is nice and clean as possible, because when the rotor sits back on it, if it's off slightly, it won't wear right, it won't break to its full potential, and it's just no good. So just have this surface nice and clean on the hub. Now it takes some solvent, window cleaner, brake clean, carb spray, anything like that. Once I've gotten most of the rust off of the hub, just give it a nice hose down and wipe it off. This will ensure that it is ready to receive our new rotor. There you go. Looks really nice and clean, I like that. Now we can worry about our caliper mounting bracket. So what I'm gonna do is remove the brake pads by moving them inboard a little bit. I'm gonna hold on to this one. I'm gonna use it later. This one you can throw in the trash. And then I'm gonna remove our clips. They come off pretty easy. Just like that. Then I'm gonna remove our slide bolts. There we go. I'm gonna do them one at a time so I don't mix them up. And you just kind of want to clean them off and put some new grease on there. You can even clean down in there if it's particularly dirty, but this one looks okay. Then I'm gonna grab some of my brake lubricant. Most of the time they come in the new brake box, but if it doesn't, go ahead and get some. Link down below in the description. And I'm just gonna remove the boot. This makes it putting it back on a lot easier. There we go. And then I'm just gonna get some of my brake grease and I'm just gonna slather that up so it's nice and greasy, just like that. Then I'm gonna take the boot and install that on first, like that. And you can kind of just fold it back in on itself. And then I can take my slide and place that in. I like to twist while I'm doing it, kind of distributes the grease evenly. Wipe off the excess grease before I plunk it down in there. Rotate it in to make sure it is making a good seal so dust doesn't get in there, and check that out. Now this moves nice and easy. Look at that. That's great. Okay, and then do the same thing for this slide bolt as well. And then right here on these surfaces where the clips go, we're just gonna clean that off so it's got a nice chance of laying flat. If it's like really rusty, don't be afraid to wire brush it. This looks okay, we just need to clean it off. There we go, looks pretty good. The next thing we need to do is replace these clips. They come with your brake pads usually, and they just kind of go on like this for both sides. This gives the brake pad a nice surface to kind of glide and return on. And they only go in the one way. They won't go in any other way. So it only goes on this way, and you just kind of line it up and push it down. Sometimes they can be a little tricky to line up, so just keep rotating and flipping it over until it looks just like this. Alrighty, now we're ready to replace our brand new brake pads. These are made by Detroit Axle. They're semi-metallic. This is a decent unit for this car. If you want to splurge and get a higher end unit, you're certainly welcome to do that. But if you want to save a little bit of money on a product that I think is just fine, these are a good option. The link is down below in the description. So there's a lot of talk online about which pad goes where. Do you want the squealer wear indicator to be on the outside or the inside? I've always put them on the inside, but I don't think it matters. Heck, on the old ones, there's 2 wear indicators, so it really doesn't matter. So just load that in from the inside out, and then, oops, well, you could go the outside in too. Guess it doesn't matter that much. Just make sure that the radius is facing up towards you, because you got to imagine the rotor spinning this way. And just be careful with it. Also, I want to talk about grease. I get this comment pretty much every single video I do about brakes, where people want grease on the actual ends of the brake ears here and inside the saddle or the clip. I don't like doing that. When grease gets hot, it gets runny. And when something gets runny, it has a chance of getting between your brake surface and the rotor, which will make them not work right. And I've seen people, and I've redone brake jobs for people that just slather this in grease and then wonder why their brakes don't work. That's why. So I just leave them dry. As long as they're clean, they're fine. And I'll demonstrate. There you go. Look how easy this slides with just my 2 fingers here. Look at that. Really, really easy. It's really not an issue. Trust me, the braking caliper is a lot stronger than you will ever be. It can move it just fine. I don't like putting grease there, but if you want to, that option is always available to you. I just like doing it this way. It has always worked for me in the past, and I've been doing this a long time. So here is our replacement rotor. Again, this came in the Detroit Axle kit, and if you're wondering how you tell the front from the rear, the fronts are always bigger. Easy way. So we're gonna go ahead and remove our plastic off of our rotor here. And you might notice that there is some grease on here. It's like one of the reasons I really like wearing gloves when working on anything. And the reason the manufacturer does this is because they make this really nice braking surface that is machined down and really, really nice and flat and is ready to be bedded with the pads and will make your brakes work properly. So the reason they put grease on there is they don't know how long this is gonna sit in a box. It could sit on the box, no joke, for 20 years and be just fine as long as there's grease on there and it keeps the rust at bay. But we don't want that on our braking surfaces, so grab some solvent or brake clean or carburetor spray and give that a nice hose down, and we're gonna wipe that off so it's just the bare metal. Oh, look at that, that's really nice. That's really good. And we just want this surface as clean as we can. And we can flip it over. Do this side as well. And there we go. All our new brake parts are ready for the car, but the car is not ready for us. We need to retract our caliper. I'll show you exactly how to do that. So the next thing we need to do is retract these two pistons fully into the brake caliper so we can get our new thicker brake pads on because, well, they haven't worn as much. And how are we gonna do that? Well, we're gonna take the brake pad that we took off earlier, and we're gonna use that as a buffer between it and our tool here. You can also use a C-clamp or a large pair of channel locks. I have this tool, it works pretty well. I like it, it was not very expensive. And usually when there's only one piston on the caliper, it works excellent, but it also works for the dual piston variety as well. So the brake pad is going to act as a buffer as we push this on down. And the reason you're going to want a buffer is because you don't want the metal from your C-clamp or your channel locks or whatever to chip the piston, because it's usually made out of like a ceramic material and it can just chip really easy and break, and obviously you don't want that. So it's not about going fast, it's about being consistent, having consistent pressure as you're tightening this down. And then I'm going to switch it to the other side of that piston and just keep tightening it down. You don't have to go like crazy Hulk tight. You just want to do it until it stops. You'll feel it just kind of go tighten, 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 and then stop. And then don't do any more because you can break it. We're just going to wiggle that out of there. And then basically you want to just make sure that the piston surface right here for the brake caliper and this surface here are more or less flush. I can just tell by feel. They're close enough, they'll work. If you have a problem getting your caliper back on, these probably aren't retracted enough into the housing and you need to go back and push these back in using your used brake pad. So now we're ready to replace our nice and clean brake rotor. We're gonna line it up so one of these holes lines up with our assembly thread like that. So that lines up there and everything is nice and flush. Here's a tip from me to you. Go ahead and replace 2 lug nuts across from each other and sink them all the way down. Just by hand, you don't need to use a tool or anything. What this is going to do is hold the rotor flush against the hub flange. So that way it's nice and parallel like this, because if it's not, it's just like off a little bit, but it's difficult to tell when you're putting the caliper back on. It'll like kind of feel like something's wrong or something's off when in reality this just needs to be against the hub. And if you put this on, you don't have to worry about it. Added bonus, the rotor doesn't fall off, so that's definitely the way to go. Now we're ready to replace our caliper mounting bracket that we assembled earlier. Just goes right on like this. And then I'm going to grab my torque wrench, load up to 133 foot-pounds, which is quite a lot. So if you don't have a torque wrench, understandable. I would just go pretty darn tight with a breaker bar. You're probably going to be in the ballpark. And you'll notice my torque wrench hasn't gone off yet. It's because I'm going to break up the torque so it goes down evenly. There's one. And there's 2. So now we're ready to replace our brake caliper, and you'll notice that something is off here. There is a space between our pad and the rotor, and we know the rotor is completely flush with the hub, so it can't be that. It just got knocked loose while we were tightening things. It's totally fine. Just squish it back down like that. Everything will be just fine. Then off camera, I'm gonna go ahead and cut our zip tie while I'm holding our brake caliper. Make sure it's not gonna go anywhere. So making sure that our brake pads are nice and synced down onto the rotor, we can grab our caliper that we cut loose and just place it back on. A lot of the times it won't want to go on, and that's because the slide here will be protruding out like this bottom one is. You can just push it in with your fingers like that, it's all right. And just make sure it sinks on down and everything looks correct like this. Just be careful because the caliper can just fall right off. And then we can replace our bolts. Sometimes you kind of have to move the caliper around a little bit to find threads. And we're just gonna bring these down to touch, 13 millimeter. You can see it's spinning, so that's why you grab your 17 millimeter wrench and you put it on the slide here. And GM was actually thinking when they made this, because you can actually get a wrench in there. Usually you don't have that luxury and you have to use like a pair of channel locks or something. So good job, GM. That is a very nice feature. Then I'm gonna load my torque wrench up to 26 foot-pounds, which is not crazy tight. That's probably like one arm tight if you don't have a torque wrench. And if this is, again, if this is spinning, go ahead and back it up with that 17 millimeter wrench. But this is just fine. So next, let's talk about this torque assembly screw. You can replace it, that's just fine. But if you live somewhere that snows or maybe it was really difficult to get out, consider not putting it back. Because look, the rotor's not gonna go anywhere. See, this is not gonna move. The lug nuts are going to be holding the rotor down to the hub surface. They don't really need help. There's also going to be a rim holding this down and keeping the force nice and even, but if you feel inclined to replace this, please at least put a little bit of anti-seize on there. I'm going to replace it for the sake of the video, but between you and me, if the camera was not rolling, I would not be replacing it. And then we're going to put our screwdriver in the top of the rotor this time, so that way when we tighten that screw, it has something to tighten against. And the torque spec is 124 inch-pounds. And if you don't have a torque spec, or if you don't have a torque wrench that goes that low because they're kind of rare, I would just say about wrist tight. You don't want to overdo it. You can bust that off like super easy. And then we can just remove our lug nuts. Then we can install our wheel and we're good to go. But you probably know how to install a wheel, so I'm going to skip that step and move right on over to getting in the driver's seat. Don't take off just yet. So now we've done our front brakes, we can't take off just yet. What we need to do is hop in the driver's seat, and we're going to depress the brake pedal very slowly. And you'll notice there basically is no pedal. It's very, very light. Go all the way to the bottom of its travel, and then let it come back up very slowly. And what you're doing is you're pushing those pistons that we retracted back out a little bit. So there's a little bit of preload on the braking system because, well, you want the braking system to work immediately, obviously, when you push the brakes. And I can already tell the pedal's getting very firm. I would do this process at least 6 times just to make sure you have a nice and firm pedal before you go and try to brake in your brakes. So even when you're done doing this pedal, don't just take off. And there we go, there's my 6th pump there. Let's give it a 7th just to make sure. Oh yeah, very firm pedal, very, very good. Now before you take off and try to drive the car, do not do that just yet. You can't drive normally because the brake pads haven't been broken in yet or bedded in, because the rotor is a brand new machine surface and the brake pads are also a brand new surface. They need to be introduced to each other. Otherwise, the brake dust that's created when they initially touch will build up and kind of form a glaze and will clamp the brakes together too much. And you'll have a big problem with brakes. They won't work properly, so you need to break them in. Luckily, it's really easy to do. I'll explain how to do it. So around your neighborhood, I would go up to about 10 miles an hour and I would lightly touch the brake pedal. So this is my foot, this is the brake pedal, and just touch it a little bit. Just give it a little bit of a touch because you want the pads and the rotors to touch each other and that brake dust to kind of poof off. You don't want that buildup of brake dust if you just lay it on the brakes really hard. It'll make them not work properly for the life of the brakes. And basically, you're gonna have to redo the brake job if you don't brake in your brakes properly. So again, go around your neighborhood, just touch the brakes together, let off, touch the brakes together, accelerate back up to 10 miles an hour, make sure no one's around, be smart, be careful, be safe. Do that about 6 times. You want those surfaces to be nice and broken in. So touch on, let off, touch on, let off. And so that brake dust is gonna be thrown off and won't build up a great big sort of glazing surface on your brakes and making them not work. Just like I said, once you've broken in your brakes properly like that, you're ready to go. Your brakes have been properly broken in and you can drive the car as normal. This job is absurdly easy. This is definitely something you could tackle in your garage at home or even in the driveway. It's very, very simple. A mechanic is probably going to charge you parts and labor $500, that kind of neighborhood, depending where you live, to do a brake job on this. This is really, really easy. You can get both front and rear brakes for $140. Heck, I bet I can get the materials and supplies for way under $500. And then at the end of the day, I have all the tools. And you didn't pay somebody else, you're doing it yourself. You know it's done properly with quality parts. Thank you so very much for watching. If you found this video helpful or interesting at all, please consider becoming a member down below by clicking that join button. It is a direct way to help the channel out if you like what I do here and want to support it. Other than that, a like, comment, and subscription go a huge way in helping my channel out in the algorithm surviving on this crazy platform we call YouTube, and I so appreciate it. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.